Today, right now, this is what we call Argentine Graveyard Hour. This year, we've been doing it hybrid, and we wanted to see how it works. We fused our South School with our regional school, and now we're going to go to the Argentine part. I think that the experiences that they're going to share with us from the different provinces will be very important for our colleagues from other countries. So I would like to invite our friends from the provinces to join us. I'd like to invite Juan Ferreira from Córdoba. This is a very important province for those of you who don't know it. It's what we call a Mediterranean province. Then our dear Patricio Carranza, who is from Córdoba province, but he's been living in Buenos Aires for so long that he's lost his accent. For those of you who don't know, the Cordoban accent is quite unusual. They have quite a distinctive accent, and it's a very well-known accent, really, certainly in the Spanish language in the Hispanic countries. Well, welcome to both of you, and over to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today and inviting us to participate in this very important event. As Olga was saying, this is an Argentine session, isn't it? It's unusual title of the session. If I invite you to tour Argentina, it sounds rather like doing tourism, really. And in this tourism activity, we've got so much to show you. We've got a country which has so many differences. There are lots of things that have been done and much yet to be done. So today we're going to be hearing from 4 exponents who are going to tell us what they're doing. I'd like to welcome Anabel Cisneros, who is the manager of ARSAT, the Argentine government-owned telecommunications company. I'm joined by Juan Ferreira, who's the president of the Cordoban Connectivity Agency, who's going to tell us a little bit about that, what he does. And we're going to be looking at 2 particular aspects in the first 2 presentations. We're going to be looking at infrastructure, and then Gabriel, Giovanni, and Mauricio Ryan will be talking us about the regulatory aspects, more to do with the legal side of things. Oh, I need to change the program. Annabelle is just leaving a meeting now, so she's very sorry. She's actually also on the board of the CONAI. So I'd say that maybe while we wait for her, we should start with Juan or Mauricio. I'm sorry to mess you up like this, but as we were saying, if we start by talking about infrastructure, maybe over to you, Juan? Yes, well, there's my presentation. The idea of this presentation is to tour the relatively short life of the Cordoban Connectivity Agency. Basically, we are a state-owned organization which provides telecom services in the province. It was created towards the end of 2020, as you can see in the slide. But in fact, its story goes back a little further, which is when the law 2064 was approved in the province. It's called the Connectivity Plan. And what it means is that the agency is in charge of rolling out the connectivity plan in Córdoba. Through that law, the provincial legislature can drive a plan to work specifically on actions to reduce the digital gap. As you can see, it actually all started just before the pandemic. It was a situation that we have identified, and obviously what the pandemic threw into relief was the dimensions of the problem. And obviously, at the end of the day, it helped us a great deal because this kind of plan shows us all the things that we have yet to do. but at least it provides us with a legal framework. This is a state-owned agency, and its remit is to see through the application of the law. Conceptually, what we're doing is to promote digital inclusion throughout the province. This is quite a big province in Argentina. I think it's the third largest province in the country, but also presents a very diverse terrain, has mountains, it has arid deserts, it also has quite a large agricultural area, rivers, lakes, it's very diverse. And it also has the interesting feature of a very broad demographic extension. We have 97 different municipalities, which are different governmental units, if you like, each with their own public administration. But each one of these municipalities, in terms of their social demographics, are very different. We have the city of Cordoba itself, which is over 1.5 million. And then we have 100 maybe of these small municipalities, which are really very tiny. So the challenges of the digital gap and of connectivity are quite significant, and because of the geographical issues and the demographics involved. Our vision is to be a territorial actor or a stakeholder. We can't do this by ourselves, obviously. We can't solve all the inclusion issues by ourselves, but we do want to be leading the way, articulating and collaborating with other actors to reduce these gaps. The idea is to work as part of the ecosystem, the community made up of the private sector, cooperatives, which is another aspect of the province. In those 147 different municipalities, there are over 200 cooperatives, which provide, many of them, connectivity services, as well as other things. So it means that basically there's a cooperative pretty much for each 2 municipalities. So they're a very important player. It's very important to interact with them, as well with larger enterprises. We really want to cover the entire spectrum. Basically, we can reduce this. We can summarize the work that we do in 2 areas. First, we work on connectivity, and the second is digital skills. Connectivity can be defined as 2 areas. Firstly, infrastructure, and then access. In terms of infrastructure, what we're seeking is to guarantee the main investments in the province so that we can reach each municipality with a wholesale proposal. The scope of the law actually only refers to the wholesale market, which means it can't get involved, our agency can't get involved in residential or corporate services. We only deal with wholesale commercial activity. So what we're looking to do is guarantee those investments. Now, our proposal began to gather momentum when there was a major investment in the province in the main trunk gas pipelines. Over 2,500 kilometers of trunk gas pipelines. So we saw the opportunity to lay fiber optics lines at the same time, making the most of the investment. And it was obviously going to be a win-win situation. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that later on, but those are the kinds of investments that we're seeking to drive. It's not last mile ones, but reaching each locality with a commercial proposal. And the access, as I said, in that wholesale market, because in many of those localities, there wasn't any wholesale presence at all. And this is what we're trying to do. And in those where there was some sort of presence, there was only one wholesale supplier. So in terms of price and quality, there were issues. And what we're trying to do is make that offer more dynamic as a whole. Now, all of that, which basically has to do with connectivity, in terms of the connectivity law, we always looked further because we are also looking at driving more digital laws so that wholesale services can be provided and we can accompany those people that need to be educated on how to use technology, providing, if you like, digital literacy opportunities so they can really make the most of internet access. I think we're all very clear about that, actually. Now, in terms of infrastructure, here are some numbers so that we can go into these in more depth later on. The network is over 5,700 kilometers in extension. Part of it was laying that fiber optics when the gas pipeline was laid, and it complements other networks that were laid, which can be public or national, as we coordinate with ARSAT, which is the Argentine government-owned telecommunications entity. And what we're all continually trying to do is to extend that coverage further. Now, our network reaches 26 of the departments in the province, because our province is divided into 26, and we are present in all of these, and 179 localities of the 147 localities in the province. We have 180 new nodes, 40 of which are already up and running. And the population that we are reaching in these 179 localities are over 2,900,000. It's very key, that number, because obviously from the point of view of Cordoba capital city, this adds a great number of inhabitants. Now, as a wholesale operator, we began the stage of commercialization in June. We have 40 contracts. Some are still at the signing stage, but are quite far along. We have 13 cooperative type clients and 27 private companies, ISPs. In 21 of these departments, there's already commercial activity. Of the 179 localities where we are working, we have already 86 where things are up and running. And 73 of those are less than 10,000 inhabitants. And that is a specific feature that we are attempting to tackle. The fact of these smaller localities, which is where there are greater connectivity needs and greater challenges too. In 17 of those localities, what we've done is to expand the wholesale offer, and another 26, we've created it because there wasn't any at all. And in terms of the final volume of end clients, we're reaching over 58,000 homes or companies, depending on the service. In terms of access, something else that we've been working on is to create free Wi-Fi access spaces in parks and squares, which is kind of a social contribution, really. And we're trying to expand it to clubs, particularly in low-income areas where these areas are particularly important and really need connectivity. And in terms of digital skills, looking to overcome user gaps, something that we've been developing in the framework of the SDGs, which covers access to internet. We have a strategy which we called ABC Digital Strategy 360, which is composed of 3 programs. The first is Digital ABC, which are different modules and workshops that we provide where we try and help people address different aspects of the digital gap. These can cover things such as gender, disability, generational, and also from a socio-economic point of view. We have specific content which has been developed and available on our YouTube channel and website, which provide tutorials. We're working closely with a number of different allies. CECELAT is one of them that we've been working with. We've been working with Olga and the whole team. It's been great. And they're all specialists in different aspects of the digital gap and how to tackle these from the public sector or the private sector, and even from the NGOs. The second component is the Connectors program, where what we are seeking to do is transfer skills. Because what we're trying to do, we can't tackle everything. So what we're doing is seeking to develop digital literacy promoters. We give them a free course which lasts 3 months so that they can develop their own projects independently of the agency. It's always with a view to encouraging digital literacy. We're going to be certifying our first 30 graduates shortly. And the third aspect of this is to make the most of the spaces offered by the cooperatives in the different localities, where the connector can make the most of all of our workshops and give them to people who need in-person workshops, which is obviously impossible for us. So we work with connectors and with the local cooperatives. We have 9 of these up and running so far. And to close, I'd like to say that all of our initiatives are discussed previously with experts. So we have a hub where we exchange ideas with different experts, and that's where we develop most of our programs. We also have a program called Let's Talk About Internet, where we try to raise awareness among people about their relationship with Internet and governance, and spaces like this one. And this is where we provide our Internet governance certification with CECELAT. And we also have digital economy programs, which are a complement to digital skills. Now, what challenges do we face? To continue expanding our coverage, our services, to achieve greater competitivity in terms of prices and quality, but above all, to be agile and be able to offer the right services and to be able to evolve. Because this issue, this sector, are extremely dynamic. So we must be able to change and shift accordingly. Thank you very much.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much, Juan. And we are going to take the Q&A. During the Q&A, some questions. Annabelle? Is she ready online? Okay, if she's not ready, let me welcome Gabriel Shivan. Gabriel, can you hear me? All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Javier is a Supreme Court Justice from Salta. And giving the overview, we're going to migrate from infrastructure. Right now, we're going to be covering another aspect that we're dealing with as we tour around Argentina. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having invited me to such an important conference. It is a pleasure to speak on behalf of the justice system in the province of Salta. To keep it short, I'm going to summarize the acknowledgements by saying thank you. My province is located in the north part of Argentina. It has most of the borders, whether it is international or national. We have neighboring countries like Bolivia, Paraguay, and Chile. And at the provincial level, Formosa, Jujuy, Corrientes, Chaco, and Tucumán. We are in a strategic location for mining, and hopefully we're going to have projections that are going to place us in the position that we historically deserve in the context of Argentina. In this regard, we've been working on improving the justice system to update using the tools, technology tools, as efficient as possible to improve the justice system. But I don't come here from the issue of from the perspective of technology, since we have people that is a pleasure to hear from them, like Mauricio, who is very well respected at the national level. He's a keynote speaker also. So any kind of reference from the IT point of view or technical point of view, please excuse me. And I'm going to reflect upon some of the perspectives that we have considered together with other colleagues on the phenomenon of technology. To give you an overview, in Salta, we are implementing on e-files in all agencies in Salta, which includes the decriminalization of the process. We believe that in 2 years' time, or we are going to have e-papers. We have invested and spending time in the ongoing efforts to improve the quality, high quality standards. We're working also to safeguard the information in e-clouds. I know that in some other provinces they have developed this further, but originally we have invested in deploying our own infrastructure in our premises. Right now we have been investing also in enhancing management systems. I know that many other places have developed their implementations in the justice system more than our office, but this is a pilot project that we have underway, and we have other projects on AI, such as quantifying risks, judgments, calculators, penalties, executions. These are the projects that I've been working on the City Council, investigating from the legal point of view these topics that is going to give us very positive results so far. Particularly, I will reflect upon an idea and a vision that we have towards artificial intelligence and digitizing the new technologies and the justice system. For this purpose, I will refer to a paper of a visiting professor in Salta that created some concerns and interest. His name is Daniel Pastor, where he treated the rules and regulations, the author of which is Dr. Corvalán, that works in law and artificial intelligence. Where herein, in this paperwork, Dr. Corvalán triggers some ideas that I'm going to use for further reflections on some ideas that open my eyes and created to expand my observations. He raises the point that when we talk about IT, emerging technologies, disruptive technologies, IT, or technology in the world of communications, could be encompassed by artificial intelligence, considering always AI as a purpose in itself, or as an end in itself, as a tool, basically. So what is the progress that has been made in a world where we live in something slow, from legally speaking, when we have to expand the regulations or the rules, and takes time because it's so slow, and this is characterized by the field. So there's an engine that drives keeping the forms, or sometimes we are stuck in formalities that are dogmas or general beliefs. So we don't see a rapid evolution. It's kind of slow. So the first item that we are going to raise is what we're working on, the foundation blocks here in Salta. Well, let me tell you that we're working on the digitalization of the work performed in tribunals or courts based on what we're doing. That is, we are trying to improve what we've done so far with less sophisticated tools or less practical tools. But eventually, we're digitalization our work or the tasks that are known to all of us. And we're making advances in predictive learning, automatic machine learning, basic machine learning. But in this way of doing justice, it's just a few steps that we're making, and this is a challenge that we had ahead of us. And the challenge is that we don't see it, we don't envision it that clearly, and that is why it's going to be one of the triggers in this debate by expressing our ideas and information. Together with the traditional processes and digitalization, we find interesting ideas without resorting to modern technologies, but we can speak of cyber crime, digital evidence, the business world, and the world of public law, compliance, and artificial intelligence. Tele-trials, the judgments of algorithms, for example, fines, vehicle fines, electronic files, or photo files. So we can create a different, higher quality justice system, and in a different way. We are learned when we hear from a technologist and philosopher that is called Weiderman, that later I'm going to give you some of his literature. And he argues that artificial intelligence require us to learn how to administer, manage the justice system, and how to learn lessons in the justice system. So not to reinvent the wheel with new tools, but new things, creating a new service. Marcelo Reinese, who is a very important technologist, and that he has been quoted in this paper, he says that technology is here to stay, and that created a future shock in me. He says the technology is here to stay, but we don't have it. It's our mindset to open this new technology. So the information that comes from our systems, computers, IT, the set of bits, will allow us to do more things than we can, and our limitations is in the way we conceive things. So not only do we have to do things better, but differently. And it gives us examples, so that's what I would like to share these examples with you. He argued, or technologies argue, what happened if we have a time capsule and then we're taken to the caves, to the hunters and gatherers, and we take to the gatherers hunting, if we take them fishing poles, nets, rifle, and we gave them to the gatherers as an experiment. In this tunnel, we take them to the caves. At first, I'm sure that the hunters or the gatherers are not going to know what to do, but trial and error. In just a few minutes, they are going to come to learn to use the fishing poles and nets, as well as the rifle. They may shoot themselves, but somehow they will learn how to use it because their mindset was to be a gatherer at that time. And if we leave them some tools, the cartridges or something that could be self-charging like solar panels, I'm sure they will come to realize they will revive and they will continue using those tools. But what happens if these hunters and gatherers in this tunnel capsule of time, in this fiction that we are envisioning, we take them agricultural machinery, a tractor, sowing, cereals, and we take them there in that time capsule, and we later observe what they are going to do. Their mindset of hunters or gatherers is not really ready for conceiving it in the agriculture, applying to agriculture that it was going to supposedly come years after. So the tractor is going to be used for hunting. The seeds are going to be used for cooking, and probably the plowing is going to be used for, or the plow is going to be used for hunting. But sowing crops are not envisioned, and even though they are blessed with the 21st century tools, they're going to miss out that opportunity, and that is going to be a missed opportunity by this experiment in this time capsule. Why is this useful? Why do we reason in this way? It makes us think of one more example that we can give you. What happens in Socrates in Athens? We take them a typewriter, books, and pencils and pens. Probably the trial would be conducted in the same way. Using these tools, probably the writing would be tidy. Probably the note taking is going to be much faster. However, it's not going to change much. It's the same rationale that is applied today. It doesn't mean that our brain from the time of hunters and gatherers has evolved that much. It hasn't changed that much biologically. It's very similar to the current human beings. So something that is happening to us is that we do not conceive what we're going to do with the tools that we already have, the potential of the tools that we have at hand. We have a limitation that is embedded in human beings with the way that we use those tools. And that is why a scholar such as Juan Corbalán poses the idea that the challenge lies in finding a paradigm shift in law and in procedure law, especially. And raises a very important issue, arguing that what we have today, and that's what we have to do research and improve, is our imagination, because the technology is here. We have the plow, the tractor, the seeds, and we don't know what to do with that. We still date back to the time of hunters and gatherers, so we need to be innovative. We need to think that tracing back to the first industrial revolutions, we conceived the washing machine, and it was like a robot that was powerful enough that cleaned and that washed clothes by hand. And with time, we came to realize that the most effective thing was to do the laundry was a box with a cylinder, not with a robot with the shape of a human being washing by hand. Because in time, it took us to the evolution that these things could be efficient and could do things more effectively. In order to stick to the agenda and to raise a few things and ideas, let me tell you that we may conceive a new idea, a new system, a system based on algorithm and law that has algorithms embedded. So as long as we think limiting or restricting the legal issues to construing the law, especially that of discretionary decisions, obviously all the system based on technology will be at crossroads. But if we are able to configure or to conceive these activities effectively, more automation or artificially intelligence driven machines we're going to have, regardless of the complex cases and the potential of the creativity of human beings. But for quick, expeditious, or swift operations, we should switch to an algorithm legal reasoning. And that legal reasoning is going to drive artificial intelligence and automation eventually. An example that is raised usually in the legal field is a complete procedure that is complete, that, for example, the issue of the speeding cameras. When they are accurate and is well implemented and deployed, and a vehicle exceeding the maximum allowable speed is going to create that photo. That camera taking the photo is you're going to have defined by email. And at that point in time, we came to realize that the camera in frames per second takes a snapshot of the first instance of the trial. Just by triggering, we have the claimant, the law enforcement, attorney, juror, judge, and a judge that executes that sentence. So we have that in a single trigger frame per second. So are we improving the justice system or differently? Does this eventually improve the justice system? Are we doing it in another way? There's no doubt that we are doing this differently, but the question that we should be wondering from the point of view of human rights, are we leaving aside or setting aside like the right to defense human rights? Because this is what we need to raise, because the algorithm may be wrong and the automatic like speed cameras that are doing machine learning, they could discriminate things. So there are many issues that we need to raise. In order to stick to the agenda, I will try to raise a few questions for you to think and reflect on this artificial intelligence and the new ideas of digitalization and the new idea of conceiving a new justice system. And to see that technology is here to stay, and we human beings are the ones that do not venture to go to the future. So we are merely gatherers or hunters from the past. So we need to change our mindset or procedures, and this is the challenge that we have ahead of us in the next few years. So my humble contribution, taking the thoughts borrowed from many authors, probably created new ideas for a new debate.
Gracias, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I think you've raised a lot of questions which are very interesting. What you've just said, Gabriel, is really interesting. And it's another fresh look at ideas. I quote Einstein but intelligence is about having fun. So now let's go to Mauricio. We're going down the Andean mountain range all the way from Salta to Mendoza, and let's hear from Mauricio. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. We are colleagues because I work in the Mendoza legal system, and I'm facing these issues of digital transformation. So Gabriel's introduction was really fantastic. What I wanted to talk about is something that I've actually experienced, particularly during the pandemic, regarding digital transformation. Not only those of us who are doing technology help to bring about digital transformation, for those of us working with us who are asking us to make changes, but at the same time, in the area of IT, as regards the province of Mendoza, we're also looking at digital transformation. And this begins by looking at new digital tools which we have available, which enable us to look at different ways of tackling the problems and find new solutions. During the pandemic, the issue was how to enable lawyers not to have to go to the courts and all the paper circuit And that was quite a difficult process. Now, people stopped using paper. In fact, procedures didn't change that much. Maps digital transformation isn't so much about the digital, but the transformation, because we're still thinking about the proceedings and using new tools to do the same as we always did. But maybe these tools offer so much more. Perhaps these tools, when we no longer use paper, we're no longer relying on the same supports. The timing changes. And there are new mechanisms of exchanging information. Messaging about a brief, for instance, chats, a WhatsApp message. And that has helped to bring about innovation and transformation without completely changing everything. Talking of AI, the proposal has been that to train an algorithm to read a document and detect anything that has to do with something sensitive, habeas corpus. We've actually started down the road, although we haven't implemented anything yet. That is a way of using new tools to take a new path of transforming the process, the proceedings, and that's what we're working on. And we're not just talking about the user's relationship, the proceedings, but internal processes. Before, it used to take weeks to develop the filing of briefs, and very often there weren't. And people weren't equipped to provide quick responses. So we've been looking at speeding everything up because they're working with digital tools to change the way in which information and briefs are processed by developing new software. Again, we're looking at the area of technology. If I'm using too many technical terms, please ask. But the idea has been to, in the same way that we took away the paper supports for the lawyers, we ourselves removed or changed our relationship with the computers and looked up ways of using internet to improve public services. Like we used to use databases or data as a service, networking, Kubernetes, which is a very useful technology, or Docker, which is another very useful technology, which allows us to take a different path from the one that we were using before. Before, we were using the computers and running our apps on computers, and we've moved on from there. Docker is one of those technologies that has really changed the way in which, at least I personally, and indeed many of my colleagues, deal with developments. You encapsulate the app, and then you can run it in the cloud. So, like, you virtualize the development of software instead of the hardware. It's quite a big deal, really. It changes the perspective of where things are managed. And with these tools, what we've done is work with the codes developed by the programmers on depositories as a repository kit, which automatically updates when new codes are uploaded to the cloud. Everything is automatic. The tests are run automatically. It's put inside the container and it's deployed in a Kubernetes cluster. And in this case, we're using Focal Phone, which is a service provided by Google. There are many other technologies which we're using, which are very efficient when it comes to storing files like PDFs, which we're talking of the briefs that the lawyers used to present. And we've developed our own software, which is quite automated, where what we've done is automate different aspects of the infrastructure, particularly my specialty, for instance, which is within technology. I administer databases, and I was actually removing work from myself. So the developers can deploy their code without needing to ask permission from the owners of the infrastructure because it's all automated. And this means that the cycles become much shorter, up to the point where you can do them in a matter of seconds. And this means that we can also provide answers more quickly. And this has changed our mindset, particularly in the judiciary. On the basis of this first experience, we created a laboratory before the pandemic, just a few months before it. And the pandemic enabled us to use new technology, which we hadn't really been given permission to use, as it were. We didn't totally trust it because, one is always a little bit skeptical of change and all things new. But anyway, we just jumped in with this new technology. And today we can say that 100% of the developments that we're making in-house within the technology area of the Mendoza judiciary, they all go to the cloud. They're all automated and they're in the box. The developers are working as code writers and deployers. So they're like basically operators using public cloud services, which makes it easier to use these computer resources. It wouldn't have been possible. These new digital tools, which we as IT specialists use, are helping to transform the way in which we produce software. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and any questions are very welcome. Because the same thing that's been happening to the judges and lawyers with these new tools, they've changed the way that they work. We're also living exactly the same thing as technology software developers. So what Gabriel says applies perfectly. We have new tools which are giving us new possibilities and helping us. We need to fail, obviously, we need to try things out, but I'm sure that by doing so, we will reach new solutions.
Excellent, Mauricio. Great remarks. And we continue along the lines of what Gabriel was saying. I was telling them that it was a continuity of the concepts raised by Gabriel, that change of mindset and thinking outside the box, as Mauricio said. There are some technical tools that probably are this ones now, but they will be replaced in the near future by others. But the important thing is to have openness and to think outside the box and that vision, so that can lead us to implement change in the future. And it has to do with what Juan said, the infrastructure. The need to have the highways, roads, vehicles in place, as well as drivers that will know how to drive those vehicles in a creative way. So by this, we end up accomplishing the goals. Are there any? I was going to ask questions first to the three panelists before I open the floor for questions. For example, we were touring around Argentina. By these excursions, we have seen local, regional, and national levels: Córdoba, Salta, and Mendoza. What are the three perspectives from the global point of view and from the territorial, from the national point of view. Mauricio was speaking of the cloud, and that is key to make these changes. So how do you see with the coexistence of these new technologies, with what you're doing locally, and how do you see the future growth or the implementation at country level? Let me be brief. We have had several integrations with other provinces. We are launching a hub of communications for inter-jurisdictional matters at the federal level. It was led by the province of Buenos Aires. We follow suit in Mendoza. Blockchain transactions. Cordoba did FNL. And then we had the backend. We had the code repositories with the automated systems. And we're taking part from different provinces. So it's a federal development that it would be commissioned before September. Excellent, Mauricio. What Mauricio said, and in line with his ideas, let me tell you that we're faced with a challenge of collaboration that has become transcendental, particularly, and everything that has to do with the power of the internet. And one of the ways that we can create this is through collaborative projects, which indeed ends up accelerating the process in those places where we could be lying behind. So in this case, we don't have any frontiers. And this implies a lot of collaboration. So if you analyze the major projects or the large companies that break this paradigm, these are collaborative platforms or projects. So they're, in the way I see it, lies in collaboration. Gabriel, what do you think of this? Following the concept that Juan was talking about, story, for example, my youngest daughter is studying in medical school, and his notes were incredible. She did it with many technological tools, and hopefully you're going to share with your best friends, I said. And she told me, no, I have like 6,000 followers because I uploaded this in the cloud. So there's a change in mind. The mindset is totally new right now. When I was at school, I was shared with my schoolmates. And now they're competing with the number of followers in social media. So this collaboration scheme is the new way of thinking, it's the new rationale, and it's hard to understand sometimes because I was thinking that she was going to share it with 6 people only, but she shared it with 6,000 followers. And this is what we're seeing in this process is in developing countries, as for low-income countries. We have access to information and to ecosystems that may be similar to the most developed countries across the world. So it's a competitive advantage that is more or less equal. Now, for us, for the provinces that account 2% of the electorate in a country where most of the elections or the electoral vote is at the federal level, there are main corners of the country or places in Argentina that you could gather 50% of the vote. So we're like thousands of kilometers away from there. That distance is hastened right now. You're democratizing information. You're having access to information in real time in large volumes across the country and across the world, as a matter of fact. And for this reason, I am very optimistic. We're living in a time that is unparalleled in the national and the international world. Never have our rights been so protected, and never have we had access to so much information. And it's clear that in this democratizing and democratization and equal process, or process of equality, is at the federal, regional, and local level. And that's why what Juan said, if we don't have basic information or the basic infrastructure, people are not going to have access to information. If we invest enough resources and infrastructure where we could have a pipeline of information, is going to be great. And we should be less selfish by sharing. And it's not that we're being nice to others, but we do it naturally, with natural collaboration in a wide community where everybody is sharing this sort of information. Thank you very much. I think that we are going to try to take one or two questions because we're kind of behind the time right now. My name is Emiliano Guerros. I come from Buenos Aires and I work in the public ministry of Buenos Aires, of Argentina, I'm sorry. I have a question for Gabriel. Following the implementation of AI in improving the justice system, this AI is a tool for settling disputes or criminal cases, or for solving criminal cases. How do you see AI, like CleanView or any other software, that through facial recognition and through open doors you can identify a person? Do you see this possible? Do you consider that this may annul or lead to annulments of cases? I know that the tools are going to be useful for these procedures, or for having digital evidence. We are amidst the world of cybercrime. Even the evidence is considered in virtual environments, like metaverse. I mean, we cannot escape from these ideas. However, there are problems, or there are biases, or even issues that are raised that lead to discrimination or vandalism. And since this is open source, the access to that information, to databases that are based on algorithms, require to work on standards like the European Union did through artificial intelligence, and everything that is going to impact on human rights require human intervention or a review or revision instance by a human being. So it's what we talked about before, like in spinning cameras, because you have taken a picture when we exceed the maximum speed. This is law enforcement notice, penalty, and even the bill to pay. And you can advocate, or you can defend yourself, and you said, okay, I have to claim I was speeding because I was taking a pregnant woman to a hospital. This is not going to be implemented in a digital system of the algorithms or artificial intelligence. I believe that we cannot escape from these new technologies, algorithm, open source, that dilutes the information in such a way, but the human discretionary decision needs to be guaranteed, at least at a revision or review instance, thinking that we cannot release our responsibility from disconnecting the computer, because there could be bias and that would affect human rights eventually. Mauricio, Gabriel, Juan, thank you very much for your time, for being here, for your thoughts, also for being part of the South School of Internet Governance. And this is just the beginning. As Mauricio said, we need to make some mistakes in order to make progress, and this is what Gabriel was saying. So thank you very much to the three of you. And we're going to break for coffee.